want to introduce you to our guest speaker today. Her name's Bree Wright. She's actually the daughter of Jenny Melberg, who works in our comms team. Many of you will know Jenny from the amazing photographs that she takes around the school and her work with interviewing students here. Bree is a former student. She was here in 2007 studying Year 11. In 2008, she moved down to study at the Victorian College of the Arts, where she completed her Year 12 certificate and trained in diving. She actually trained about 37 hours a week. So for those of you who have a part-time job, that's about 3 times as many hours as most of you will be working. And in fact, it's almost a full-time job, which is 38 hours a week. In 2013, she had a life-changing spinal injury. But from there, she went on to compete in the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. And she recently completed a PhD in molecular biochemistry. She now works for Macquarie University and the Western Victoria Public Health Network. And she's here today to talk to us about making the most of the everyday. So I'd like to hand over to Bree. Can we please give her a round of applause?
Straight. Well, good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here today. So I want to start with a bit of a thought exercise. Oh, clicker's working, that's a good start. All right, so I want you to think today about when you came to Alumbra Theatre. Did you have to go up any stairs to get here? Did you need to go across grass? Maybe there was some cobblestones. Maybe there was a steep hill. All these things are things that I never would have thought about when I was here at Bendigo Senior. Now, maybe some of you may have thought about that because you have a disability, but these are just some of the things that has meant that my life has changed really significantly. But that doesn't mean that I haven't made the most of my life experience, and that's what I'd like to share with you today. My computer's just going to lock. So, this is me as a little kid. As you can see, I don't have a disability. I went to school here at Bendigo Senior, but also when I grew up, I was a little pocket rocket. I actually had the nickname Cyclone Bree. I was very curious, I was very creative, and I was very determined for life. I was very interested in doing any kind of sport. I often got told off by a lot of my teachers because I would want to participate in every single sports day, from golf to football to soccer to tennis. It didn't matter if I knew how to play or not. I just loved the idea of being part of sport. So for me, as a child, I really identified with being an athlete. I was Bree the athlete, whatever that sport was that I was doing. I started off doing gymnastics at quite a young age here at John Palmer's gym. By the time I was 9 years old, I'd competed at my first national championships, and I discovered the love of competition and that I loved competing. I had a very fierce nature, which definitely developed into some white line fever. But it was something that gave me a lot of strength, something that I really enjoyed, that I loved to share, and that it was who I was as a person. Sport gives you a lot of things. I learned how to be very focused. I learned how to manage my time really well, because if I was training many hours a week, I only had a certain amount of time that I could study for. So it gave me a really good way of being really focused in what I was doing. And it also offered me lots of different opportunities. So I was able to do media training, so I feel really comfortable doing public speaking. I would get to do sponsorship gigs, so people gave me clothes to wear. I'd get, a little bit of fame out of this. There was a lot of really cool things that sport gave you. But sport also has a pretty dark side. Sport, you can be pretty vulnerable in. When I was 16, I made the decision to move out of home, to travel down to Melbourne so I could continue to train at a really high level. I had been told that I could be amazing if I dedicated myself to sport, and I wanted to do that. Right from a young age, I sort of told mum and dad that I wanted to go to the Olympics, and that was my goal for life. I felt like if I achieved that, I was set for life. So I made that decision to move away, which left me in this very vulnerable state of going, now I have to work it out myself. So I had to work out how to live in a shared house when I was quite young, how to get to training at 6 a.m. in the morning, which wasn't rock up at training at 6 a.m. It was, I need to be ready to go, already warmed up at 6 a.m. How do I get there without a license? But it also left me vulnerable to some of the dark attitudes that are associated with sport. So I had coaches tell me that I could be great except that I had a 10-pound tyre around my waist, or that I had eaten too much Christmas pudding, and maybe if I just didn't eat that Christmas pudding that maybe I would be a better diver. And when you're quite young and very influential and sport is your identity and that's everything about you, that stuff has a really big impact on you and really impacts your life, and you make decisions based on what those people say. There were also really unreasonable expectations that were put on me. So I had an experience where I broke my hand, and the expectation was that I kept on training because the rest of my limbs worked. It was just my hand. So there was a lack of understanding from senior people around you that should have known better, that I actually needed to care for my body. And because I didn't have a really good support network in Melbourne at that time, I didn't know that maybe that would have an impact later on in my life. I really clearly remember making a comment of going, oh, well, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to need my hands later on in life. That's a bit funny now, considering I need them every day to get around. When sport is your entire life, it means that you have an emotional regulation that is so tied into your sport as well. So if I had a good day at training, then the rest of my day was good. If I had a bad day at training, life just felt pretty shit. And that made it really, really difficult for me to learn how to self-regulate. So in 2009, I made the decision to retire after going to the World Championships and feeling like my body had been through enough and I'd had enough and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I felt very lost and had a huge crisis of identity when that occurred, because I had always been Bree the athlete, Bree the diver. Now, who's Bree? I didn't know who I was. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but I feel very fortunate that I didn't have a very public crash landing. Maybe some of you have read in the media about, athletes such as Grant Hackett, Greg Inglis, or Chantal Newbury that had pretty public sport crashes of identity crises. In this process, I went through trying to discover who I was. Who am I without my sport? And how did I do that process? I made the decision to move back home, and my family looked after me in a way that was so nurturing, and I was so fortunate to be surrounded by such wonderful people. And I think Lunig sums it up best, that for me, I had in my head that I needed to be faster, higher and stronger, but really I just needed to be slower, deeper and wiser. So I went on this great little journey about discovering who I was. I got to do lots of really fun things. I'd finished year 12 by this point, and then I was like, okay, well, I've done year 12. I probably, I want to go to university. That's something that's always been really important to me. How do I get into university after a couple of years hiatus since year 12? So I went through that process, returned to uni, started to find my feet again, got a job, was working in a pool, and started to get really confident and go, I feel like I've worked it out. Like, I just need to find out what's really important to me. What are the things that I really enjoy doing? I like being active, but engaging in that space in a non-competitive way. I really like having some time to myself, like doing a jigsaw or, doing some sewing, but then have something that challenges me intellectually. So those were the things that I kind of went, this kind of sums me up quite well. So I really felt like I had gotten my shit together. I moved out of home again. I was living in Melbourne, and I thought I was invincible. I literally thought, you know what, I've had the hard part, I've worked it out, I'm pretty cool. So this may look like a rather innocuous photo of someone with a dinosaur on their face, but this is actually the last photo that I have of me without a disability. So this photo was taken the day before my injury, and if you had have asked me what I thought life was like at that point, I would have thought that it was pretty good and that nothing could touch me. So on the 21st of January in 2013, I made the decision with a friend that we would go have a fun at a trampoline centre. We weren't doing anything silly. We weren't messing around. We were just having a bit of fun. We had been there for maybe 20 minutes and I fell off the trampoline and I hit my head. And in an instant, everything changed. As soon as I hit the ground, I knew that I was in a lot of trouble. My whole body caught on fire and I had this sense of like, this is how I'm going to die. And I was like, this is really shit. I don't want to die in a foam pit. But it was horrifying, the idea of going, this is like, is this how it ends? Like, is this how it is? And it was the most profound and horrifying, I'm going to use that word again, experience for me. And I knew in that moment that nothing else mattered but that I had to get out of here and I had to get through. So I don't know how I got out of the pit, but I know that I had friends there that helped and that I was very quickly rushed off to hospital. And a few hours later, I was sitting there with consultants standing around me going, well, Bree, you've broken your neck. And then they said something that was very odd. They said, you're very fortunate that you have one of the largest spinal canals that we have ever seen, which means that there hasn't been as much damage to your spinal cord as we thought there would be. And it means that all the swelling that's in your head is probably not going to cause you any brain damage. And at the time, I couldn't really process it, but I certainly did not feel lucky. That was not my first experience. I had this instant experience of going from having everything to not being able to use my right hand, to feeling like my whole body was on fire and that I couldn't really connect with it in the way that I had previously. I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't walk. And I felt like I had lost it all, just like that. It was just all gone. It was a huge loss of independence, and I felt like I was back to square one again. How was I going to deal with this? I have many, many days where I would say to Mum, through tears, going, I don't want to kill myself. I just don't want to wake up tomorrow like this. I can't. Like, I just can't do it anymore. And a dear friend of ours came round one day and said, Bree, I want to share something that may help you in the morning. She said, when you're feeling really crap when you wake up in the morning, all I want you to do is get up, have a shower, get dressed, maybe put on something nice that you feel nice in, maybe put on some makeup or do your hair. And if after doing all that you still feel really rubbish, then maybe today should be a dinner date and you go back to bed and you take it easy. And what was interesting is that most of the time by the time you'd sort of gotten up and done your hair and gotten things sorted, you kind of went, you know what, I think I can get through something today. Maybe I will try and do a little bit more. Maybe I will try and see if I can read a few more sentences or go and get a coffee out and do something. But on the days when it was too hard, I did give myself permission to go back to bed. And I'd get mum and dad or whoever was at home to help me. And we'd clear out all the disabled stuff, all the stuff that made me feel like I wasn't myself. And I'd prop myself up in bed and I'd watch some terrible comedy or film. It didn't matter what it was just something that any normal person could do. And it just allowed you to switch off from life for just that little bit of a minute. And that was a really powerful lesson for me to learn, that it is okay actually just to listen to yourself sometimes and give yourself that space that you need. And I know that there are some days where, you know, I was very fortunate to have a lot of supports in place, that I had regular psychologists and other therapists that I saw that were able to help and prevent me from getting into a really, really dark place. But these were these little bits that really helped me along the way to help manage my own emotional regulation. About 9 months in, I had a stint at Royal Talbot Rehabilitation Centre. And I was speaking to one of the neurologists there that kind of painted this picture of what my life could look like. He said, oh, you know, you'll probably have a desk job, and, you know, you'll park, you know, in the undercar park, and you'll, you know, take the lift up, and you'll be able to do your job, but you're going to be really tired. Fatigue is a really big problem for someone that has an incomplete spinal injury. You'll probably then come home at the end of the day, have a bit of a sleep, and, you know, you'll be able to have a relatively normal life. And I looked at him and went, fuck that. That doesn't sound very fun. I don't want to do that. I want to do things that are far more exciting than that. I want to go climb a mountain, or I want to go do something really interesting. I don't want to just do a desk job all day and then go to bed. For me, that just was like, that is not my bar. My bar is so much higher than that. And that determination from life that I'd had previously really started to come out then. So I decided to set myself 3 goals. So I wanted to return to uni, I wanted to learn to drive again, and I wanted to move out of home. And within 18 months, I was able to achieve all of these. I was very proud of myself. But it wasn't without its challenges. Just have this as a great image in your head. My first day of doing one subject at university, I rocked up, had my mum pushing my wheelchair, so she would push me in to the lecture theatre, and of course it wasn't accessible, so you'd always be like right up the front and everyone else just sat right up the back. And then they would take notes for you, because I couldn't use my right arm at that point. And then mum would push me out, and I was like, I am the coolest kid in the room here. But nonetheless, I persisted, and next semester I did 2 subjects and 3, and then I finished my undergrad here at La Trobe, and then started to look at how I could then go, okay, how can I move forward now? How can I really move forward here? Some of my concussion symptoms about reading and writing were starting to improve. I wanted to really improve my physicality, and one of my friends introduced me to wheelchair basketball. To the horror of my parents, they thought sport was done, and the idea of me getting back into sport did not impress them at all. But what I found was a really beautiful community of supportive people that knew what it was like to go through an injury and to have a disability. And it was an amazing support network. And I came at sport in a completely different way to what I had previously. It was not trying to absolutely destroy your body. It was actually about how can you be the best version of yourself, which was a very different attitude to what I'd seen in able-bodied sport. I realised I didn't change the slide. Sorry. There we go. So, for me, I continued to play wheelchair basketball to the point of which I made the Australian team. And then I kept on training really hard. And I thought, you know what? While I'm training for the Paralympics, I'm going to do a PhD at the same time. That sounds like a really good idea. Now, what was really handy is for anyone else, they would have thought that was completely mad. But because I had learned previously about balancing my time and being really dedicated in being able to do both sport and study, I excelled in the work that I was doing. I dedicated my time. There are probably many photos or images that people have of me where I was either on the plane or, at the back of the centre, basketball centre, doing some work, and then I'd go and train. So in 2021 due to COVID actually, I was very, very fortunate where I was able to attend the 2021 Paralympic Games for wheelchair basketball. I wasn't there as a pity sport or anything like that. I had a growth mindset. I was there to get on with my life. And that didn't seem like it was anything less than the Olympics. If anything, it felt like one of the biggest achievements that I'd ever conquered, to be able to go from the spot of going, I have no idea what my life is going to look like, to be able to achieve something that I never thought was going to be possible again. And shortly after finishing wheelchair basketball and going to Tokyo, I also completed my PhD. I'm now able to sit here and go, yep, I'm a doctor. And I was able to do that with a disability, able to go to a lab, work really hard and be dedicated in that space. And I didn't do it straight out of uni, like I didn't have to go year 12 and then this one next and this one next. I was able, with the support of a whole bunch of people, just find that pathway through. That meant that I was still able to achieve everything and more than what I thought I would be able to achieve. Now, I did ask a few people before I came in here what the statistics are on this, because I'm going to have to do a bit of guessing, but my numbers are pretty good. So this is probably a little bit of a hard one, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. So in Australia, in 2022 and 2023, 2,107 people per 100,000 had an injury that was significant enough for them to be hospitalised. And this is just in the age group of people here, 15 to 24. Now, statistically, if there's, maybe there's a bit less than 1,000 people in the room today, that's like 20 people. Statistically, it's 20 people sitting here today have the capacity, likelihood, that they will end up in hospital with an injury that is significant enough that they will need to be hospitalised. Now, this may not be life-altering or life-changing, but it may be significant enough that it has a real impact on your life. Now, if I was sitting here listening to this, I would have gone, it's not going to be me. And somehow it was. But what hopefully you can hear is that if that is if your ticket does come up, it's not the end of the world. It's really hard. Absolutely. Every day is really, really hard. Making choices every day to choose to be the best version of yourself is really, really hard. But it's doable. Surrounding yourself by good people that support you in what you do is really, really valuable. Is really valuable. So, I just want to conclude by saying that we all make choices in our lives, and a few people have said to me, do you wish you never had your injury? And because I'm a bit of a comedian, I often would say back, I was an asshole before my injury. Because I was really ignorant, and I think I didn't actually take the time to appreciate what I had. I wish I'd appreciated every time I'd gone for a run prior to that. I wish I appreciated, for me, I would be running 2 up these steps, and now that's a little bit more of a challenge. So really appreciate what you have and the people around you, because they are really, really valuable. And in the end, whatever your journey is, there is always a really, really great option. A really great option out there. And I was able to weave through all the challenges, all the dark days. And I am so grateful that I chose that every single day. So I'm a scientist, I'm a mum, I'm an athlete, maybe I'm a bit of an inspirer, I don't know. But I just happen to be in a wheelchair, and that's my life. So thank you for being such a wonderful audience.